This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association, your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Brent Barnett, and Riley Smith. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Dustin Hoffman.
Good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. Today is April the 11th, 2022. We thank you for joining us. Now, as we look at some of the things that we'll be talking about today, last week, Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley held a press conference with ag media to talk about his cattle reform bill that is going to have a hearing coming up later this month. Brent Barnett has more details on that. I also talk with Iowa Congresswoman Cindy Axne. We talk about E15 and what's being done in the House to help support getting year-round sales reestablished. We also run down your ag weather outlook, but first, let's take a look at the markets. It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net. Well, it's time now to take a look at how those markets closed down for the day, and for that we call on Bill Biederman from agmarket.net. Bill, thanks for taking the time to visit with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
So let's go ahead and talk about what happened today. Let us know what went on in those grain markets.
Yeah, so we started out the day very optimistic in corn because China announced that they had bought, or the USDA announced China bought 1 million tons of corn for the United States. Some of that split between old and new crop, but certainly an indication, Dustin, that things are getting turned around and that all of the doubts about China will never buy from us again. They hadn't been buying for almost a year, since last May, and in the last few weeks now they've bought a couple million tons. So we're very excited about that. That got the market starting out about 9-10 higher. The market faded back, led by soybeans, which ended up the day down 33 cents. That's because 15% of China is shut down and locked in their little living rooms because of COVID. And so there is some concern of an economic slowdown over there, maybe even less oil and crude oil consumption. So the crude oil started to break. It's down $3 to $5 during the day. That pulled the soybeans down. Anybody who trades soybeans watches crude very closely. When the soybeans tumbled about 10 to 15 cents, it was okay. When they went down into the 30s, then the corn market gave up. And the wheat did too a little bit, but the wheat remained very strong because the outlook for the wheat weather outlook for the next 2 weeks looks very threatening. It doesn't look too good in the Corn Belt either, but definitely out west, it's dry.
Yeah, that's definitely true. When you mentioned the Corn Belt, we're obviously paying attention. On this side of the Mississippi, we're painfully dry, though hoping to get some rain here during the week. But also on the eastern Corn Belt, they're too wet. So, I mean, we got planting. I mean, yes, today was the first day that Iowa was able to plant under the insurance policies that they have. But what kind of effect is this going to have now in the coming weeks if things don't really let up and change? I mean, we are dry, which is great to start planting, but we're not going to turn down rain if we can get it because we're so dry.
Right, but each day that goes by with the new hybrids and the new technology that we've all figured out, that the earlier you plant, the better the odds are you're going to hit those record kind of yields. I believe that's going to be out the window because really for the next week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on where you live, it's going to be hard to get out there in the field. Dustin, I just traveled from Tennessee up to northern Illinois and the Wisconsin border and back down. I did not see one field with tillage done. I only saw one field that had anhydrous put on recently, and I only saw one field with any kind of implement in it. I did see a lot of fields with burn down sprayed, but that was it.
All right, so let's take a look at how that livestock market's reacting as well. I mean, when grain prices are active one way or the other, they tend to reflect that as well. What went on today for cattle and hogs?
Well, in the cattle market, we're expecting some stability here. The market's had a pretty big sell-off from, June's gone from like 139 down to like almost 132 last week, and then it held, and now we're kind of consolidating slightly above that in the 134 range. Dustin, the product got pretty well cleaned up, so we're seeing some stability over there. Going into the summer, we expect product to firm, and we expect this demand to come in and get some legs under these critters. And so really we should see a low being put in soon with a little seasonal rally into this barbecue season. I know I'm ready to get outside. I just need some warmer weather. It's so darn cold out. Over in the hog market, that market is, mainly traded with a lot of technicals, right? Because the hog market isn't used for hedging like it used to be. This market has real solid support, moving average support down around 110. Junes are trading at 115 right now. So, anything within a couple of dollars of that, we should see some technical buying. If we get a close probably above the 117 area, that's probably going to turn some of these computers into a buy mode. There is a gap on this chart above us, so eventually this market's going to go back up and fill that gap. The hog market has good fundamentals underneath it too. Right now, I think there's the concern about the Chinese economic slowdown that could slow down. They're a big importer both of the pork and the beef now. It's a market we need to watch. I think that'll be a headline mover, and the overall food inflation is there also to provide some incentive for New York money to come into our markets.
And just sticking with the livestock for one more question, Bill. Obviously, here in Iowa and around the country, we're talking about the avian influenza and that poultry market. What is that going to do to some of that beef and pork market share there when with things going on the way they are?
Yeah. So in a total tonnage standpoint, it's probably not going to be as bad as it could be. Thank God for that. At least of all the numbers that we see, it won't, but it is supportive. It's certainly created a headline reason for the product on the shelf to go up in price, making beef and pork a little bit more competitive to the consumer's pocketbook. All these meats are expensive. We know that, but the consumer's not going to stop eating. I think they might buy a few less T-shirts than they would stop buying some good food to eat.
All right, Bill. Well, a lot of good information there. If folks out there want to talk some of their marketing plans and strategies with you guys at agmarket.net, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, so they can either go to our website, which is agmarket.net, or they can give us a call at 844-4-AG-MARKET. That's 844-424-6758.
All right, Bill. Well, we thank you so much for the insight and look forward to talking to you again real soon.
You bet. Thank you.
And that was Bill Biederman from agmarket.net here on the Ag Market Recap. Let's go ahead and run down those closing numbers, courtesy of the folks at Bar Chart. July corn was down 2 at 758 3/4. December new crop up 2 at 718 even. July beans down 27 1/4 at 1640 3/4. November new crop was down 9 3/4 at 1485 3/4. July meal was down $8.40 at $454.20. Soy oil for July 56 cents lower at $72.91. July Chicago wheat up 30 3/4 at $10.89 even. Minneapolis wheat up 13 3/4 at $11.40 1/2. Kansas wheat is up 35 1/2 at $11.45 1/2. Oats up 5 1/2 at $7.60 3/4. On the livestock side, June live cattle up 97 cents at $134.80. May feeders up 52 cents at $159.90. Lean hogs for April 60 cents lower at $98.42. Pork cutouts 32 cents lower at $104.92. And Class 3 milk for April unchanged at $24.18. And that's been a check of our Ag Market Recap here for you on the Monday afternoon edition of AMPM. We're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soybean Checkoff. And when we come back, Brent Barnett will be talking about remarks from Senator Chuck Grassley about the beef industry and the bills that he has put in place and are going to be heard about during an Ag Committee hearing coming up later this month. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. For some time now, the cattle industry has been lamenting the stranglehold that the Big Four packers have on the industry. They're looking for different options to market their cattle and grow the prices that they are getting. This has also included some legislative efforts, and Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley talked with Ag Media last week about an upcoming hearing with the Senate Ag Committee on a bill that he has proposed.
Dustin, the Senate Ag Committee will hold a hearing later this month on Senator Chuck Grassley's updated cattle market reform legislation. Now, Grassley announced on Twitter Thursday evening that a hearing takes place at 9 a.m. Tuesday, April 26th on the recently updated Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act. The proposed bill would require the Secretary of Agriculture to establish 5 to 7 regions encompassing the entire continental U.S. and then establish minimum levels of fed cattle purchases made through approved pricing mechanisms.
If you're one of the big four, you will be required to provide price transparency to the market, and price transparency for all the prices of all the cattle sold in the United States is very important for anybody that's hasn't contracted ahead, wants a price on a certain date, then he's got the latest information instead of just a fraction of the cattle that's been priced beforehand, like the situation is now. So broad price discovery is very important to get a fair price.
Grassley says the updated bill would also establish a maximum penalty for covered packers of $90,000 for mandatory minimum violations.
There's never been this much momentum for industry change, both at the grassroots and in the Congress. Every cattle group in the country acknowledges that additional price discovery is needed. Now there's some that aren't going to agree, but the groups that disagree, they simply want us to study and study and study. You know, kick the can down the road. We have waited long enough. Cattle producers going broke while the big four packers record the highest profits ever.
The Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act also includes provisions to create a publicly available library of marketing contracts. It has received support from the Iowa Farm Bureau and the Iowa Cattlemen's Association. For the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, I'm Brent Barnett.
Thanks, Brent. We appreciate the updated information. We'll have more from the halls of Congress coming up just a little bit later, but right now let's take a look at the ag weather outlook. Well, it's been a beautiful day here in downtown Des Moines as the sun shone throughout most of the state. Of course, the tables are set to turn again tomorrow. Let's take a look at some of that strong thunderstorm possibility. As you see here in the first picture, the National Weather Service is showing an enhanced risk for severe weather across the large portion of the state, while we will see a slighter threat around the edges. And here you see that they're calling for more damaging wind, large hail, and a chance for some tornadic activity, but those chances are still to the lower side. So the message is pretty clear. Be aware of what's going on around you and be prepared to take action if the weather turns sour. So let's see what the rest of the forecast looks like. Well, as you can see, we had some nice sunshine running across the whole state with a few clouds here and there, depending on where you were today. We saw highs right now in the low to mid 60s throughout most of the day. Now tonight, look for clearing skies and lows dipping down to about 39 to 43, that low 40 range. And we could see a little bit of rain shower activity possibly in the northwest as those rain showers start to make their way into the region for tomorrow. Now that chance of thunderstorms is going to be coming up throughout the day as we talked about them earlier. It's going to increase from west to east across the state as the day goes on. But highs, as you can see, will be in the 60s throughout much of the northern parts of the state. More 70s in the central and southeastern parts, and then we could see even 80s in the southwest. Taking a look at the affiliate weather map, we can see in Cherokee we have that chance of storm activity and a high of 66. Shenandoah, a chance of rain, possibly a thunderstorm and a high of 80. Des Moines, look for showers and storms throughout the day tomorrow and a high of 74. Same for Albia, 74 with some shower activity. Waterloo will be seeing some storm activity and a high of 66. And Clinton is supposed to be seeing some showers and thunderstorms mixing and a high of 67 degrees. For more detailed forecasts in your local area, turn to your Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network affiliate. That's been a check of the Ag Weather Outlook. When we come back after this quick break, Congresswoman Cindy Axne joins me once again to talk about E15 and efforts being done in Congress to establish it year-round. This is Ag Matters PM.
As we approach planting season, make sure you stay safe and share the road with your local farmers. Slow-moving tractors with large planters occupy a lot of space on the road, so stay patient and follow at a distance of around 50 feet. You should never, ever try to pass them at a bridge, intersection, hill, or curve. It's far better than putting yourself or someone else at risk. So please, stay safe and remember to tip your hat to your local farmer this planting season. This message was brought to you by your friends at the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network.
Welcome back to AMPM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Dustin Huffman. E15 has been a battle for a few years now, and we thought that battle had been won in 2019 when the EPA granted year-round sales capability for the biofuel. Since then, the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals has stricken down that ability, saying the EPA lacked the authority. The only way this is going to happen is if a mandate comes from the White House or the People's House. And for more information on the support being drummed up by the Biofuels Caucus, we talked to Iowa Congresswoman Cindy Axne. We're here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network as we have a chance to sit down and talk with Iowa 3rd District Congresswoman Cindy Axne about a couple high priority topics here today that are going on in Washington. Congresswoman Axne, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to visit with us.
Dustin, I love being here always with you, so glad to be talking to folks. I just left the floor where we were voting on a couple bills, and one of the most important things I did as I was on the floor between votes was talk to my colleagues about pushing for the three things I want to make sure we at least get into the next reconciliation package. And I want folks to know that literally biofuels was my very top request. So I'd never miss a beat when I'm on the floor to be able to talk to leadership about why it's so important to press Iowa values and the things that we need. We're in the middle of a vote series to increase sanctions, of course, and keep Russia from moving forward in Ukraine. And we're obviously want to limit their fossil fuel sales. So I'll be back for another set of votes in probably another half hour or so. In the meantime, going to keep working for Iowa.
So we're obviously talking about biofuels, and E15 is one of those things that we're going to talk about. It seems like it's had quite an uphill battle in the last few months, but it seems like there's some promise there on the horizon that we could see it come back to year-round again. You want to kind of give us an update as to what's going on?
Absolutely. So here's where we're at. We had within the Build Back Better agenda, I was able to get the bill in there that I have, which expands E15 year round through getting the infrastructure out there. And then Angie Craig and I, Representative Craig and I, are also leading, and many others, on the effort to fix a little bit of a snippet of language that would literally eliminate the pushback that we constantly seem to be getting against ethanol because of really data that doesn't represent its cleanliness. So we are working on all fronts to address those issues. But I feel pretty confident at this point, as you mentioned, after conversations I've had with the last couple of days with leadership, in getting our biofuels pieces into a package that could be coming up here. There is a lot of support for it. The president absolutely supports clean energy and biofuels. The speaker does as well, and so does other leadership. And from what I'm hearing, and I take all this with a grain of salt, everything with a grain of salt, that we've got the support in the Senate for this issue. So I am cautiously optimistic that this is finally going to be a piece of legislation that gets the support that it needs, and that we can move our biofuels agenda forward, hopefully this year.
Now, maybe you can speak to that. As you said, you've talked with leadership, and there's been that impression that the administration hasn't been too keen on furthering the biofuels. It looked like it was being left behind a lot of times when they talked electrification. What's kind of changed, or what have we been missing maybe in that message from the administration?
Well, Dustin, I think what's been missing is exactly what you brought up. It's coming from the administration, and that's what I mean when I say the directors of the departments. It's not coming from President Biden. President Biden has always been in support of Midwest farmers, Iowa farmers, and our biofuels and clean energy that we produce in Iowa. The speaker is a big supporter of ethanol. I found that out late last year. I did not know she was such a big supporter of ethanol. And she was one who had pushed back against Obama to get more support for it back in the day. So what I can tell you is I think where the rubber hits the road on the pushback is within those departments, which is why whether it's Administrator Regan or EPA Director Granholm or whomever, I've been in meetings with all of them within the last 3 or 4 weeks. Every single one of them, as they keep talking EV, I'm like, Bubba, why are we not using a tool in our toolbox right now that would lower prices at the pump and help us with national security and, of course, fight back against climate change? This is a win-win-win across the board. And so that is where I think the issue is, Dustin. And it's my job and others' jobs, and why we do so much in working with those offices and writing letters to them to let them know that I'm representing Iowa, we need it. folks like, my colleagues representing Minnesota, Illinois, et cetera, same thing. And the president wants this. And that's where I think the breakdown is really, honestly, it's these folks who have come in, they have their own agendas too. Sometimes it doesn't align to what they're hearing from, the president. And we don't always get the conversation moving to get it back in the right direction. That's where poking and prodding from congressional representatives happens. So that's what I think really happened. Just, people who think they're representing the president, but just are kind of representing some of their background and what they'd like to see.
So the question being, E15 comes off the marketplace again here for the summer, in just like 6 weeks or so. Is it something you think Congress can have fixed and patched up before then?
Well, that's a tall order. 6 weeks is not much time out here from what I've learned over the last, unfortunately, a few years. But anything can happen. We know we're ready for it in Iowa. Other, ethanol producing states are as well. If we have the impetus to pass the bill, I think we can see this on the ground and moving absolutely by then. I just think 6 weeks is a little tight for some, for this, but I'm never going to say never for something that we know is so important.
Well, Congresswoman Axne, we thank you so much for the update and look forward to hearing more of them in the future.
Hey, always love it. Great to be with all of you today. Thank you so much.
That's Iowa 3rd District Congresswoman Cindy Axne here on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. And on a related note, President Biden will be in Menlo, Iowa tomorrow to tout the infrastructure bills and also to talk about the effects it's going to have for rural America. And that's it for this episode of Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. All our content is online at iowaagnet.com. You can also follow us on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and find all our video content as well as replays of previous episodes of AMPM on our YouTube channel. Don't forget about our free twice daily market podcast through Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the IARN studios in Des Moines, for Brent Barnett and Riley Smith, I'm Dustin Huffman. Thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.